particularly salient example is that minorities overwhelmingly vote Democratic. This trend appears only to be increasing and will undoubtedly reshape politics in America. This diversity explosion will alter all aspects of society, politically, economically, and culturally. The United States is on the cusp of great change for a new national demographic transformation in the 21st century.
Okay, so since I was a kid, I heard about the melting pot, right? So the idea was, is you came to the United States, you dropped your language, you dropped your last name. My family changed their last name. Their original last name was Pietramala. How many families changed their last name when they came to the United States? How many people assimilated, their families tried to assimilate as fast as possible so they couldn't tell if you were Irish or Italian, right? Okay, so we did that. We were a melting pot. We needed to assimilate. And then as time went by, we became this American Sally, right? I think we had this little health movement at the same time. Maybe Jane Fonda was coming on with her little neat thing. And we recognized that there were differences, right? And that was cool. That was good. You know, we're going to tolerate each other. But we're all part of the same American salad. I like to kind of think of us a little bit more like this kaleidoscope. We're constantly changing. It's dynamic. It can look one way today. It can look a different way tomorrow. Right? And to understand that, hopefully, will allow all of you to incorporate this work, because that's my goal, all right, into some of your programming and content. And today, when immigrants come to the United States, they come in such large numbers, and they go where other like-minded people are, that there's no need to melt. They keep their cultural identity, and they keep their language. So in Minnesota, we have one of the largest Hmong populations, actually third-generation Hmong, and they're actually elected into city council positions. They're leadership in the state. We also have one of the largest Somali populations, and we have Somali leadership for the first time as well in Minnesota, because immigrants go to the same place. So let's talk a little bit about how the United States is changing. Now, I don't know how to call this graph. I've been calling it the wave graph. It's projected out to 2060. Look what's going to happen. The white population is going to be the minority, right? Things are going to be very different. The way we work is very different. Our programming should be very different. I bet the majority of our programming has been validated by a white audience and a white culture that's been clustered. Good, bad, right, or wrong, we've been dumped in the same pile, the same cultural identity, which isn't true. But that's what's happened. Right? Now, another way to look at this, kind of like this, I like the bright colors and the pie chart, I'm a little bit more familiar with it. By 2044 is when the actual decrease will be. Right? That's just right around the corner. How many of you have kids under the age of 18? Okay, if they're still under 18 by 2020, and they're white, if you have white kids, or look white, or pass as white, they will be the minority. Okay? So it's happening. And it's exciting stuff. I mean, we get to learn from different ways of knowing. We get to learn because of technology, all these other ideas from millions of people from around the world. It's amazing. So here's a map of the foreign-born population in 2010. And so the foreign-born population actually, from 2000 to 2010, it went from 31 million to 40 million. Okay? I mean, one thing we know about the United States, you know, there's certain trends, right? We know we're getting older. We know we're getting browner. We know the population growth is happening down south. We know that there's more heads of households that are run by grandparents. There's certain changes. There's even a gender shift, right? There's more women that have paid positions and that are in executive positions. Now, this is a great visual tool mapper, and you can get a lot more data besides minority by each state. You get information about businesses, agriculture, race, ethnicity, urban areas, housing and living arrangements. But this is where, right now, 2000, where the majority of the minorities lived in each state. Not in each state, but the southern part of the U.S. has the largest percentage. But I do want to make the point that Main Street America has already changed. So on the left-hand side is decrease in population. This is of kids under the age of 18 from 2000 to 2010. So whites have decreased, as well as, I hate to say this, you guys, the old minorities. Isn't that a funny term? It's not mine, just sharing it there. But the new minority populations are increasing. Okay? Here's another way to look at that. So in 2011, it was the first majority-minority cohort, right? So first time in U.S. history that the babies that were born, the majority were non-whites, right? It's happening. So for me, I ask, what are you doing about it? How are you changing your work? How are you working with new audiences? How are you stepping out of your comfort zone? Now here's a little story about, once again, how the immigrant populations, where they've come from, how it's changed. You know, in the 60s, most folks came from Europe, right? And then today, we're coming, you know, Southeast Asia, Latin America, Mexico. And that change, what's interesting is what happened was in actually 1965. There's the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965. And what you see that is happening at the beginning here is you see that the European descent have decreased. And the reason why is we went from a quota system to a system where our goal was twofold. One is we wanted to reunite immigrant families so they could be together. That's nice. It's a good thing. And we also wanted to attract skilled labor because we needed to, you know, build up our labor force. This is a fun graph. The red bars are the projection. I think it's up to 2060 if I remember correctly. But in 2023, it's estimated that would be the highest time in U.S. history. I can't see that figure. 14.8%, the highest level of immigrant share of the population. So it's just going to keep going up. Now I love this slide because I'm a little biased here. Our African population since 1960 or 70 for the past 40 years has gone from 80,000 to 1.6 million in 2012. Basically, that population has doubled every 10 years. And I hate to clump that population. I mean, it's a continent with 57 different countries, variety of ethnic groups, and so on. But that's a huge message. What's the likelihood that it's going to double in the next 10 years? Who thinks it's going to double in the next 10 years? It's going to double. So we know this. So what are we doing about it? Very similar with our Asian immigration. 1960, the foreign-born Asians represented 5% of the population. 2014 represents 30% of the population. This is just demonstrating, telling a story about the change. One thing to keep in mind is with immigrant populations, as well as African American and Native American population, that the persistence of trauma is a cycle that gets in the souls of the descendants that experience that trauma. And I know there's some people here who work in historical trauma. Is there, and someone mentioned it. Anyone here works in historical trauma? A bit? Okay, I'm wrong. So, you know, the University of Minnesota Extension, the Children, Youth, and Family Consortium, they have a wonderful resource. It's 3 videos and discussion questions to help people understand it. This happens with groups that have been inflicted in some sort of trauma. And it usually has to do with race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation. Some of you may have historical trauma in your life, things that get carried on. Those of you who maybe family members experienced World War II, or certain military people who were in the war, you could be passing on some of that trauma that you've experienced. But this is important when you're working with community members to understand this. So sometimes you're like, they didn't show up, or they were late, and they didn't do the assignment. Well, maybe they did because they're healing. Because people who have trauma, they tend to have a higher degree of depression. They even tend to have a higher degree of substance abuse. There's issues going on. Just having that understanding. That was my stop and pause slide, I called it. So languages. Is Luann here? Could you hand those out?
Oh, yeah, okay. So,
Well, just hand them out while I talk. Just.
There are envelopes that they cannot open that I scattered around.
Okay, so don't open them yet, but I just want to make sure they're scattered around. So the white bars are the number of languages, different languages spoken in the 15 largest metro areas, and the little blue dots on balloons, it looks like, is the population. But it goes from 200 to maybe 125 languages. So New York City, for example, a third of the population speaks language other than English. In the Twin Cities, in our school system, we have 60 different languages that are spoken in the school system. So imagine working with people who speak multiple languages. Now, this is a self-identified survey poll that was done about people's ability to speak English. The blue, people are saying, yeah, I'm really good at English. The gray is, I'm not so good at it. So people tend to say that they're better, which is great. I'm fluent, right, in French. It depends who you ask, of course. But what's important here is people who are bilingual or multilingual or grow up in families hearing other languages, they tend to have improved cognitive and social skills, right? They have a perspective, they have the ability to take on different perspectives. So if our future population speaks multiple languages, how do you take that information into account when you're designing programs? Even when certain words don't exist. Right? The one thing that we did in Minnesota, which was like we were caught with our pants hanging down, was when the Hmong first came from Cambodia or Laos, we started writing signs in Hmong saying, "Don't eat the fish out of the lakes," right? Because the urban lakes the fish are nasty. Well, is Hmong a written language? No. I mean, we had no idea. I mean, we had good intentions, but we had no idea, right? So language is important. So what I want you to do is, in those envelopes, pass them around. Hopefully there's one piece of paper for everyone. I need you to fill out this form. Like any extension program, you have to fill out a form. So I need you to fill out this form as quickly as possible, okay? I'm only going to give you 3 minutes. Or less. I'll put the form up on the screen for you. Can you fill that out, please? That's the form. Okay, so I don't want to keep you guys from lunch, so I'm gonna whiz through this a bit. Sorry. So the point here is when I saw this for the first time, I didn't know it was upside down because I don't see that way. But some of you knew it was upside down right away. But so for people who may feel like they're fluent in English, they may not be able to read or write English. And so when we're asking them to fill out a form, it's a little challenging. But also think about this. People from other parts of the world, having a birth date is something they may or may not know, especially if they grew up in a refugee camp. Knowing your mother's maiden name, right? In Rwanda, you give people, everyone gets their own name, typically. You change names. Or if you're coming from an area where there's been war-torn issues, you change your name on purpose, right? You don't want to say that name. The number in your family, how do you define family, right? Your race, what's race? What are you talking about that in your hometown? So we tend to ask them questions that may not even make sense or may not be part of their value system, right? And so when we go to collect data for civil rights, right, because we're supposed to collect data for civil rights, it can become an interesting challenge. So next I'm just going to go through quickly. What I've done is